remember who you're doing
technical
with.
stuff. So as of next week, we are changing our davening schedule. That Mincha Mara will be at 5 o'clock, no longer 12:35 Mincha. So Lunch and Learn will revert back to its 12:30 time slot.
Okay.
Instead of 1 o'clock, we're back to our 12:30 time slot. Okay, so today's class, Dove, is not about gum control. That involves flossing and brushing. This is about gun control. Okay, just make sure everybody is on the same page over here. And certainly this is an issue that unfortunately flares up fairly often here, usually after a tragic shooting. Then it flares up. Right? Just recently there was a whole, I believe it's in the state of Virginia, where there's a lot going on now. Yeah, in Virginia, a lot going on in terms of possible legislation, right? And so whenever there is such an issue, right, so some people make their case that if you have more background checks and you restrict the sale of guns and ammunition, right, so that will prevent a malicious person, a deranged person, a terrorist, that will hamper their efforts to cause a lot of pain and destruction. Thank you so much. A lot of pain and destruction all around them, and there are statistics that indicate a correlation between homicide and the strictness of gun laws in various countries. Opponents have their reasons also. They speak about the Second Amendment, which we'll soon see, which gives the citizens the right to bear arms. And historically, restricting citizens from owning guns was a method of oppressive governments to impose their will and to make sure that no one rebels against them. There are disputed studies about the attributing violence to permissive gun laws. They speak about that people have a right for recreational hunting, and also an argument that's made, which I think we saw somewhat borne out in the very recent Texas shooting, is that the bad guys are going to get the guns regardless of the laws. Right? They're not. Right? The laws are not going to stop the bad guys from getting the guns. They're obviously not overly law-abiding if they're going to walk into a place and start to shoot people. That's against the law, right? So they're obviously not overly law-abiding. But what it will do is prevent the good guys or gals from having the means to protect themselves or to stop a person before a lot of damage can be done. So we find this arguments on both sides, and and I think many of the arguments on both sides have validity, and it's a difficult topic. What I want to do today, and thanks to Rav Micha Cohen who compiled the sources, I'd like to go through different Torah sources that we have and get a sense of how the Torah views guns, weaponry in general, how it views it in terms of recreational usage, self-defense, and restricting weapon sales. I'm sorry, Bruce?
I said those were the two magic words. You said self-defense.
Yeah.
That's what we never hear about in the public debate.
I think we do hear about it, certainly in the aftermath of Texas, the church shooting. So there was a skilled congregant there who took the guy out very quickly, very effectively. There were a number of other congregants who were there backing him up, with their guns in tow. and that certainly prevented what could have been a tremendous tragedy. Yeah. So self-defense certainly. At the same time, even the best trained practitioners in the army, you have friendly fire. So if you have a church, synagogue, mosque situation, or any situation with lots of people around and people are taking out their guns to try to stop that fellow, you don't know if there is the danger of more harm being caused than good. One of the things that comes up is you really in the absence of having arms to take a person down, you really want to just disrupt that person. I've said before, and it's not sacrilegious in such a situation. If you have 40 people throwing a siddur at someone, if I have 40 books coming at me, I'm not going to be able to. I'm going to pause what I'm doing, and then the person can be jumped, can be attacked. So what we are often told is, if heaven forbid we find ourselves in such a situation, if you can't, put yourself into a safe place, then whatever you got, send it. Come with all you've got, and enough people throwing things will distract and disrupt, and hopefully give a chance to overwhelm such a person. Yes?
When my kid brother was in the Israeli army, and they go on the buses with all their equipment, he said that many of the Blackbeards would yell at him and scream at him because he was carrying a gun. He was in the Israeli army uniform.
I lived in Israel for 20 years, close to 20 years. I've never seen people.
Yeah, he had that happen.
It could be. I'm saying, but I would say that is not indicative.
I don't think it's typical.
Now, it does happen when you have people from a Haredi background, where certain Haredi groups who are against going to the army, and if one of their boys goes to the army and then comes back to the neighborhood in gear, that they're very, very tragically and unfortunately we do hear of things. But in general,
I was kind of shocked.
Yes. So let us begin. Let's begin. Everyone speaks about the Second Amendment. So in the source sheet, I also did the First Amendment. Because, the Second Amendment. What's the First Amendment? I don't know. So, First Amendment is Congress, when I was in Israel, this in the early 80s, that's when there were a lot of missionaries walking around. And they say, it says in Isaiah 53:6. And what does Isaiah say in 53:5? I don't know. I only take things out of context. I have no idea what the context is. Don't ask me about context. So the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Right? Congress cannot establish a religion as this is the country's religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof of anyone who wants to practice their religion, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of people to peaceably to assembly, the right to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. To petition the government. I was at the AIPAC dinner last night, and Bret Stephens, who is a Jewish pro-Israel editorialist for the New York Times, no less. Right? So he spoke about how often people cast aspersion on AIPAC as having undue influence, and he says that is basically just anti-Semitic. If you're singling out AIPAC, because you look at the NRA, you look at all these other groups, the Arab lobby, you look at all the other groups, AIPAC in no way has any greater influence than others. And one of the rights of the First Amendment is to petition the government. If there's an issue that is important to you, you have the right to petition the government. Okay, Second Amendment. a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Okay, so this was established in order to give the people the ability to protect themselves from unfair government oppression, infringement. So this is the right to protect themselves. What's very interesting, we just jump down on the notes. First, let's go to Samuel 1, chapter 13. So the first side, first amendment, second amendment, we have Shemot, Exodus. We'll come back to Shemot, Exodus in a moment. Let's look at Shmuel Aleph, chapter 13. Uplishim nesvu l'chem Yisroel, and the Philistines gathered to go to war against Israel. Shloshim elef rechev, 30,000 chariots. Sheshet alafim parashim, 6,000 horsemen, right, riders. The am kechol shel sfat hayam, and people as numerous as the sand of the sea. Vayalu vayachanu b'michmash kidmat beit aven, and they went and camped in that place, Michmash. The Ish Yisrael ra'u kitzarlo, and the people of Israel saw that they were in a very desperate situation. Ki nigash ha'am, right? The people were under pressure. Vayitchabu ha'am v'ma'arot v'chavim v'salim v'tzarachim v'varot, and the people just started to hide themselves, caves, thickets, crags, towers, pits. Why? V'charash lo yimatzei b'chol Eretz Yisrael, because the Plishtim did not allow there to be any metal workers, any smiths in all the land of Israel. Ki amru plishtim pen yasu avrim cherev o chanit, lest they'll make a sword or a spear. Right? So therefore they did not allow us to bear arms, and that way they know that they could continue to oppress us and to control us. This certainly echoes of the Second Amendment. The way to control is to make sure that they do not have the right to bear any arms. How does the Torah view weaponry in general? So we find as we left Egypt, let's go up a couple of notes now. Shemot, Exodus chapter 13. Vayasev Elokim et ha'am derech hamidbar yam suf. As we were leaving Egypt, God led us in a roundabout way, by way of the desert to the Yam Suf. V'chamushim alu b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. And we went out of Egypt chamushim. Now, Rashi brings two explanations there. One is from a term meaning chamushim, chomesh. 1/5 of the Jews left Egypt. 4/5 of the Jews died in Egypt. There were those who were very comfortable there, whatever it was. They didn't trust leaving. They did not want to go, and they did not go. However, the other explanation Rashi gives, and one does not preclude the other, is chamushim, that we were armed. We left Egypt armed. Now, God had just done 10 plagues. God had showed his absolute control over the Egyptians, absolute control over nature. And he's telling us, go out into the Midbar. So what are we worried about? Why are we taking arms?
We have no guarantee that the Egyptians are not going to follow us.
They might try. So God will lure them into the sea and drown them. God will hit them with another 10 plagues. Or in the Yam, another 50, or 200, or 250, as we say at the Seder night. God will take care of it. He's been pretty dependable until this point. 10 plagues, Exodus. Why are we taking weaponry out of Egypt? Sorry?
We have to make the effort to take.
Good. Hishtadlut, is that what you said, right? Yeah. Right? Ein somchen ala nes. We don't rely on miracles. We need to do all that we can do and then trust that God will then bring the success to what we do. Dov?
Maybe they're ready to go to Israel and conquer.
Okay, same idea of going to Israel to conquer, but we need to take the steps. So right away we see that weaponry is not something that is censured, that is looked down upon. It's viewed as something which is necessary. At the same time, Shmot, Exodus chapter 20, when you will make for me an altar of stones that will be in the Mishkan, in that tabernacle, in that mobile house of God, Lo tivnet hen gazit. You cannot use stones that have been cut. Ki charbecha heinafta aleha. Right? Because your sword has been upon it. Vatechal aleha. And it will thereby be desecrated. So what's a desecration? I thought it was okay to have weaponry. What's a desecration?
To use it on something that's to be holy.
Okay, there's a time and there's a place, right? So perhaps you might say, if that's the case, absolutely no weaponry in a shul, in a house of worship. I'm not saying that, but an argument could be made, right? You can't have an altar because that's a place of holy consecration. That's a place of holiness. That's not a place for weaponry. We'll go a little bit further. We'll see. You know, it's interesting. In some societies, they glamorize weaponry. I think is it in Yemen, where everyone walks around with a ceremonial sword?
Yeah. And their sock or something.
India.
I'm sorry?
India?
India?
Yeah.
Also one
The Sikhs.
the Sikhs. Also one of the Arab countries. I'm not sure which one it is.
Chicago.
Right? Chicago. That's something else. It's also an Arab country. Yeah. So, it's viewed as a ceremonial badge, I believe, of manhood, of masculinity, and that's not how we look at it.
Jewish people.
That's we.
I understand
Yes.
that because, for example, our gala is about the roaring 20s and come in a costume, a gangster costume, or the movies has gotten gangsters and everything. So in a sense, in our society, it is glamorized.
Okay. We're talking about a Torah viewpoint,
Okay.
a Jewish Torah viewpoint, right? Is not one. And interesting, in Israel, right, where people are walking around, soldiers walking around, a lot of civilians, and at the very end we'll discuss how it works in Israel, where there seem to be very lax, but in fact they're very strict gun laws, and yet it's very effective in terms of when a tragedy happens, the person is not left standing for very long. Within a matter of seconds, there are others around who are armed, who are trained, who will neutralize the threat. Okay? Yes, certainly there are areas in American society where it is glamorized, right? Very much so. Right? In the gang mentality mindset, right? So that is glamorized. If you're packing, then you're someone. Otherwise, you're not. Whereas from a Jewish point of view, and in Israel with all the guns, it's not glamorized.
No, it's not.
Right? It's very interesting. A telling statistic, I'll mention that a little later on. The amount of guns per person. Right? In the United States, most gun owners own many, many guns.
Like cats.
I'm sorry?
Like cats. Like cats.
Like cats? What do you
Much
mean?
like cats.
Okay.
You
Oh,
don't
cat
have
owners
just one.
own many. Fair enough. Fair enough. Whereas in Israel, if you're a gun owner, then that's pshuto kamashma'o. You are a gun owner, which means you own a gun.
One guy.
Right? Not that you've got a whole arsenal, right, packed away. Okay, we'll come to all these things. So right away we've seen that it is necessary at times. It's not something that we glamorize. And it was necessary when we left Egypt. The Torah bothers to tell us that we left chamushim with weaponry, that was important, that was significant. And we saw in Shmuel how depriving people of weaponry was a means of a foreign country imposing their will, unjustly imposing their will on the inhabitants there. How about recreational? See here, I have it in Hebrew, not in English, but a very famous question was posed to the Noda B'Yehuda. And he writes as follows, it's in the very bottom here, I'll read it in Hebrew and translate. Michtavo kibalti, I received your letter, ve'imeni makiro, though I don't know you personally, but since you came to ask, and you asked Belishna de Chachmata, you asked using a scholar's terminology, I will respond to you. Shoresh Elato, the main question was that a person that God has given him abundant wealth, and he owns this large area, this large estate. And in this very, very large estate are villages, are forests, and in these forests you have all these different types of animals, wild animals. So the question was, can he go on his own? Lirot bekana sreifa, to shoot with a kana sreifa. A kana is like a reed, and sreifa with a burning reed. That's what they would call a gun. Latsud sayid, recreational hunting. Recreational hunting. Olim asur liYisroel lasot davar zeh. Or is it prohibited for a Jew to engage in that? Imishum tsar balei chayim, perhaps because you're causing pain to living creatures. Or mishum bal tashchit, or because you are doing an act of wanton destruction. V'imishum shenagu bo isur, or if there's another reason why it would not be permitted. That was the question that was posed to the Noda B'Yehuda. V'amnam ein lanu la'arich bazeh. There's no reason to be lengthening my response. K'kvar herich marai b'poskim ksavim simen kufei shekol davar sheish bo tzorech la'adam levim mishum tsar balei chayim. In terms of tsar balei chayim, causing pain to animals, anything that's being done for the needs of humanity is allowed to use, right, kindly, not in a sadistic way, right? That's why shechita is of the least painful way, the most painless ways of an animal dying. What we call treif. Oh, that's treif, right? Actually, we use that term colloquially for non-kosher. Treif comes from the root word taruf, which means torn, which is that an animal can't be torn. It must be properly shechted. And that's how we know that the knife that the shochet, the ritual slaughterer uses, it must be tested to make sure there's not a single nick on it. Because if there's a nick, then when he does that, it will tear. And that's painful, as opposed to a very, very clean slice. So, if it's for the use of a person, then it's not shayach, we don't apply this issue of tsar balei chayim. Right? That applies where you are leaving the animal alive and causing it pain. But, right, to kill animals for their usage, that's not an issue of tsar balei chayim. Also, right, in terms of bal tashchit, if we're utilizing the animal, then it's not an act of waste. However, he writes, "Ma'odem nitama," but I'm shocked, al guf hadavar, about the very essence of this question. Who do we find as being hunters in the Torah? Esav is one. Who else?
Cain.
Cain, perhaps. Nimrod. Nimrod was a hunter. Right? That's not the ways of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. It's not the ways of the descendant that our fun is, our amusement, our recreation is killing, is shooting and killing. That's not a Jewish concept. Remember when I was engaged, so I went with Natalie and her whole family on a beautiful lake in upstate New York. Beautiful lake. We had these rowboats. Beautiful lake. And we were fishing. My father-in-law likes to fish. And we kept catching fish, and they were too small, so you had to throw them back in. And after like 2 catches, I said, why am I doing this? It's a beautiful lake. It's a beautiful day. Right? I have a beautiful fiancé. Right? Why am I pulling fish out of the water, putting a hook into their mouth, taking the hook out of their mouth, and hopefully they didn't swallow the hook, because then it becomes a real mess.
And hopefully
Right?
they don't tear their mouth when
Yeah.
you take the hook out.
Yeah, exactly. And then throwing them back in. Well, I said, let's just row. Let's just row and leave the fishing to someone else. Right? Recreational should not be causing harm to others. He also brings, very interestingly, from Halach in Shulchan Aruch, that when someone has a new garment, new shoes, so a nice wish to give them is Tivaleh Techadesh. Right? You should wear them out, right, and get new ones. Right? Meaning you should use them well. Right? Live long. Be active. Wear out those sneakers. Put a hole in the bottom of those sneakers. Play a lot of ball. Right? And get new ones. And then he says, and there are those that say that you shouldn't say that, because in order to get new ones, it means animals will need to be killed and used. So maybe there are those that say you shouldn't say that. And he says, no, it's not really a problem to say that. Because who says there aren't already on the shelves? Right? Who says the animal hasn't been killed? Who says the animal needs to be killed? Right? Right? Nothing wrong in saying that. But the very fact that he brings that up shows that we are meant to have a sensitivity. So recreational hunting would not be considered a good Jewish pastime. Recreational shooting, I enjoy working on my marksmanship, even if I'm not in training for self-defense. But I once went skeet shooting, right? And basically it's a bunch of ceramic pots that go up in the air in the shape of a bird, right? And then you got to see how many you can take down. That was fun. That was a fun afternoon, right? As long as I'm not shooting birds, or as long as I just have a target, I'm shooting a target to see where's my accuracy. So that could be considered a sport, right? Some people like tennis, some people like basketball, some people like shooting, some people whatever, right? A sport as such, I don't think that would be considered to be, that's a non-Jewish sport, right? Right? But recreational hunting, that the Nod Yehuda was very much
The sensitivity
against.
toward living creatures is emphasized when we're instructed to send the motherboard away from the nest before we take
Okay.
the eggs.
Yes, yes.
Same kind of sensitivity.
Yes, that is a good example, that we're meant to have sensitivity towards the animal world, and Judaism looks at our actions as affecting us, and even to the point of covering the challah when we make kiddush, right? We cover the challah. So one reason we cover the challah is the double challahs are there to remind us of the double portion of man. And the man, we are told, was covered by dew with top and bottom. So we too cover the challah top and bottom. But another reason given is that normally the bread takes the primary role, no pun intended, the primary role, right? And therefore gets the first bracha. Here is getting pushed off to the second bracha, so as to not embarrass the challah, we cover it. Now obviously challah doesn't get embarrassed, but the idea is if we are careful to show sensitivity to inanimate objects, then that will affect us, and how much more so will we be sensitive towards people, towards those who do have feelings and might be insulted. Yeah, just 1 second. Right. You were first. Wait, Sandy was first. Sandy.
Well, but I yield to...
You yield to the gentleman from Long Island. Yes.
When an animal has to be put down, would they ever consider shechita for the animal? A non-kosher animal, I'm saying like a lion.
You're asking, in a halachic society, when an animal needs to be put down, right? Would we would try to do it in the most humane way, right? We would try to do it in the most humane way, whatever that might be, right? Which doesn't endanger us in the process. Yes, Sandy.
Our question.
Yes, we yield back to the gentleman from Chicago.
Our questions like, why isn't it commanded not to kill animals? Why is it just it's frowned upon? Are questions like that asked? I don't remember.
Yes. Adam and Eve were not allowed to kill. According to some, were not allowed to kill animals, but could eat animals. According to others, not even allowed to eat animals. It was only by the time of Noach that mankind was given the ability, the right to eat animals. And there are those that say that comes the time of Messiah, we will return to that, right? Certainly it is an issue. Maybe we'll schedule a lunch and learn on Jewish vegetarianism and different views on that. We'll have to see what food is ordered for that week, so we don't be hypocritical in any way. Yes, that's Harriet.
I came across a very short blurb when I was checking to see who the Screen Actors Guild winners were. And Joaquin Phoenix won for Best Actor in a Film. He went to the lunch, the dinner afterwards, but he left very quickly. And the reason he left very quickly was because there is a slaughterhouse in the Wilshire district near where they have those dinners. And I was shocked that there was a slaughterhouse in that area. But he went to comfort the pigs that were about to be slaughtered, to give them water, to make sure,
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Okay.
like
Look.
just an example of sensitivity.
Yeah. Like I said, maybe we can explore that a little bit further. Okay. Now, how about cases where it's not recreational, where it's being done for self-defense? So there we already saw when we left Egypt, then we had these weapons, and they were used later on to help conquer the land of Israel. The Rambam, in the laws of new moon sanctification, meaning that when witnesses would see the new moon, they would travel to Yerushalayim to go to the Sanhedrin, to the great Beit Din there, and to offer their testimony. And based on that testimony, the Beit Din would proclaim that day or the next day as being the first of the month. A Jewish month is either 29 or 30 days, which means the next month starts either on day 30 or on day 31. If witnesses come that they saw the new moon, it will start on day 30. Otherwise, it automatically moves to day 31. If there's overcast, skies and no one sees the moon, we don't have a 50-day month. Right? It's either going to be 29 or 30 days. Like our lunar year is 354 days, right? And 354 is 30 times 12 is 360, so we have 6 months, which are 30-day months, 6 months, which are 29-day months, bring us down to the 354. The Rambam says, Haya eid sharat hachodesh b'leil Shabbat. A witness saw the new moon on Friday night. And he's chola, the guy's not feeling well. He can't make the trip by foot to Yerushalayim. Well, in that case, markivin oto ala chamor. He can be mounted onto a donkey and transported. V'afilu b'mita. If he's bedridden, he can be brought in his bed. And if an ambush awaits them on the way, meaning if there's a concern for safety, then lochena edin biyadan klei zayan. In that case, then the witnesses can carry klei zayan, can carry weaponry. Okay, so we see that when there is a need for self-defense, then there's absolutely nothing wrong. Actually, there's a lot right about being able to defend yourself. We don't say let him go on the road and he's going to do a mitzvah, God will take care of him. Right? You know, we say shluchei mitzvah, but you need to take the necessary steps that you are safe, right? That you are going to be protected. In Shulchan Aruch also we find that Hilchos Shabbos, Rambam Shulchan Aruch, a Jewish soldier is allowed to carry his arms. Okay? So we see that weaponry for self-defense is a very legitimate need, and we saw in the Navi what happened when the Plishtim were ruling and not allowing us to have the necessary weaponry. So weaponry for self-defense is mentioned in the Torah. The danger of not having it mentioned in the Navi, mentioned in Halacha. Weaponry for self-defense is certainly a legitimate reason to have weaponry. How about restricting the sale of weaponry? So there, very interestingly, the Gemara Makot, we have it both in Hebrew and in English. The Gemara Makot discusses the Ir Miklat, literally a city of refuge, which were different cities that were set up, established, that if a person killed someone else accidentally, then he needed to move to stay in that city of refuge. In a way, there is a pending death penalty on that person, which is suspended as long as he recognizes the seriousness of what has happened through him.